Welcome, Paul Wiley, composer for film and guitarist for Marilyn Manson. How's it going, man?
Pretty good.
Thanks for coming by and checking out the spot. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have going on for 2023. And I know you said you have some other films you're working on currently. So maybe if you'd like to just tell us about what you're excited about for this year with your current projects.
I'm currently working on a film called Stream, which is obviously it's a horror movie about the black web. I can't go too much into the plot of it, but it's got all-star horror cast, I should say. So it's got Tim Curry, Tony Todd, Dee Wallace, Daniel Harris, Daniel Roebuck. There's others I'm leaving out, but it's a big cast of horror icons, and it's a really cool film. Totally different from Terrifier. More of the score I'm doing is more of a digital glitch kind of Blade Runner meets in a horror realm kind of score.
Nice.
So it's been fun.
Hell yeah.
The other movie I'm doing is called The Art of Killing, which is more of a black comedy horror. It's about a painter, like a Bob Ross type, who is on a cable access show and everybody admires him, but he's actually killing people to use their blood in the paintings that he does. And that one's a lot of fun too. That's a completely different type score. It's more of a, it's more of a black comedy. I get to use more horns and more circus type instruments like calliopes and tubas and
Nice.
a lot of brass. So that one's been fun.
Have you
as
seen
well.
Bitch Ass?
No, I haven't.
Oh, it's another it's a recent black horror comedy, which was fucking hilarious, but it just immediately made me think of that. But
Yeah, the director for this movie, Jacob Enos, I think I'm saying his name right, Ennis or Enos, but one of the last films he did was Kill Granny Kill. So
I haven't heard of that.
yeah, he has an aesthetic that's like good horror, good comedy. It's tons of gore. It's like a splatterhouse, but it's really funny.
Hell yeah.
Not meant to be taken seriously. So
I love those, there's a lot of them too on Amazon Prime. They have the best horror comedies that are just on the border of being so bad, but they're so good. You know what I mean?
I recently got a Screambox subscription just because Terrifier 2 was launched on that platform, and seeing some of the titles and working with some of the titles on that, checking them out, it's pretty amazing how many low budget independent movies are just being thrown out.
Yeah.
Horror's thriving while every other genre seems to be kind of tanking at the moment. So
Yeah. So those are the two you're currently working on. Do you have any other music projects that you're excited about for this year?
as of right now, there's a couple other things that are being tossed around. Obviously, I'm looking forward to doing Terrifier 3 with Damien whenever that takes off. I can't really talk about a couple things, but there's some exciting things that are probably going to transpire in the summer.
Nice.
And then in the meantime, I produce. I've produced a couple bands in the last couple of years. One band called Here Lies Lucy that put out the record I did for them and came out really cool. I'm trying to think what else. Oh, in The Art of Killing, all the original music is my side band called Razor Candy that I do with Chad Cherry, who is in the Las Vegas. He's a great clothing designer, great singer. So me and him put together this project 3 years ago. We put out a EP. We've done a couple other singles, and The Art of Killing is using mostly Razor Candy as the original music in that movie, along with the score.
Nice. What about I'm sorry if I pronounce it wrong. Is it Devereaux?
Yeah,
How about that project?
that I've had my record that's Devereaux's pretty much it's all me. That has been kept getting put off because I want it to be perfect. So every time I've been working on that, I've got bombarded with a film. So I have a record I've been making now for 6 years that will definitely come out this year. It's about 90% done. I have
Nice.
to go back to it and I also wanted to get away from it so it's fresh again, because I was working on a lot during COVID, and then things started to pick up in other aspects of my career, so it kind of got put on hold. But I'm really psyched about it, and it's definitely the best song stuff I've done.
Nice.
As far as like not score.
So when you're writing your own music, do you like prefer to produce, mix, and master it all on your own, or do you like to outsource it, or just kind of depends on what
At
project
this
you're
point,
doing?
I've done everything from the mastering, mixing, everything. As things pick up this year with some of the projects I'm going to be doing that are bigger scale, I have a couple people that I'll bring in as my team, that are really proficient. One's really good string arranger. Other guy's really good with editing and Pro Tools just in general. So, yeah, because I mean, as the workload builds, like right now doing 2 films and having no help, plus it's more fun just to have somebody else in the room than being isolated by yourself all the time. I mean,
Collaboration is good for that outside kind of objective,
well,
view on what's
unbiased too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I'll have some of my friends come over once in a while and go, listen to this, check this out. What do you think of this? And people that I trust are musicians as well to give insight. But for the most part, everything I've done the last 5 years has just been me in my studio by myself.
Nice. When you're working on a project for so long, sometimes you just like submerge into your little bubble, and then it's like it's hard to have like an objective ear. So yeah, when you can bring in or just have someone you trust take a listen, and maybe they can point something out that completely flew past you. So like I think it's important to
also
do
you
that.
start second guessing yourself
Right.
the more things you do.
Right.
And there's only 12 notes in the musical scale, so you got to be careful too that you're not, because sometimes I'll write a melody for one film, I'm like, wait a minute, did I use that same melody subconsciously in something else? And I'll have to double check, because when you're spitting music out, like I'm averaging like 1 or 2 cues per 24 hours, so it's
Okay.
like usually anywhere between a minute and 3 minutes per cue. So usually at least 5 minutes of music is like written, recorded, mixed, mastered, sent. So it's like a real fast turnaround.
Yeah.
So you don't have time to really think about what you're doing. Just like pick a key, let's start, we'll have the core bass and add all the ear candy stuff over the top and like send it and hope they like it. And then they usually come back with notes. Not too many, but like, can you make this happen 2 seconds before? The meticulous stuff that.
So you're looking back and kind of checking yourself, like, oh, did I use that same chord structure or same melody, maybe in a different key in this previous score? So if you notice that you've done that, do you kind of switch it up a little bit? Or
Well, I try to go into each film with an instrument template that's not like anything else I've done. So, okay, we're sticking to this palette of instruments
Gotcha.
for this.
Yeah.
And then I usually try to avoid, like I've been trying to avoid just D minor, because I mean most Terrifier 2s in D minor,
It's the most evil scale.
Yeah, it works. I've also been trying to use chord progressions that aren't stock, because so many times you hear, try to add in like minor sevenths or wherever you can just to keep it, fresh and not just sounding the same.
And what's great about horror too is you can really go crazy and not worry about, is this in a specific key or am I straying too far away from this mode? It's like it can be completely chromatic and jarring and fucked up, and it's all good,
Yeah, I also try to stay away from just making everything. I always think of Jason Segel and Forgetting Sarah Marshall. He's like, I don't write music, I write omnious tones,
Hell yeah.
So I try to stay away from that too, where it's just, because you could literally just hold down a key and send it off, and
Sure. Yeah.
some directors would be like, that's great.
Right.
So even if it's a 30-second piece, I still try to make it interesting and with layers and.
Yeah, because you want to satisfy your musical, your creative mind as well, and instead of just like you said, playing one note.
And also, I want to release every score I do, whether it be on vinyl or always digitally, but I want to make it have an interesting listen from beginning to end, almost like it's a record. If it was a band,
Absolutely.
take you through different things.
I totally noticed that about the soundtrack for Terrifier and Terrifier 2. It's like you said, it feels like a record when you listen to it. It doesn't necessarily only feel like the score to the movie, but it feels like a planned out record.
Yeah, and that's kind of like my approach always too, is like, as I'm doing cues, like I never think of the duration till the film's done, and then I'll take them out of sequence. I know a lot of people release the score and it's in the sequence it happens in the movie per scene. But I don't usually do that. I usually put them in context of how it flows as one continuous listen.
Gotcha. You previously mentioned in a past interview that one of your favorite horror movies was Martyrs. So why is that? I'm curious because it's also one of mine, but I'm curious, why is it one of your favorites? What about it specifically?
I think it was the first. I mean, I'd grown up on horror since I was. I mean, I remember watching The Exorcist with my mom at like 6. I'm a product of the 70s. I was born in 73. So I was around when HBO, I think we were the first family on my block that had it, like 1980, when they only played like 10 movies and half of them were horror. But it was the first, Martyrs was the first movie I had seen as an adult that really made me feel weird for like a week after seeing it.
Same.
And everybody I've told, oh, you got to check this movie out. Make sure you get the French one. Every time they watch it, they immediately go, dude, what the fuck did you just make me watch, man?
Right.
Thanks. I can't even think straight. And it'll be like 3 or 4 days later, I still get people like, man, that movie was really unnerving and upsetting. You know, don't send me anything else like that. So, plus, now that I watch it, because I think it was, 2007, was it? Now it's like 16 years later, and it doesn't seem that far off from reality, and a lot of things that are going on in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. It's jarring, and like the concept and the cinematography, the visuals, it was just so intense and so visceral and just like really fucking gnarly.
And I think a lot of the scenes in the basement might have went on a little too long, where it's
yeah.
It's like, really, man? Okay, we got it. You know, you can move on now. But yeah.
But I think that's why they're so memorable. Like those types of films is like they go, okay, here's probably where we should cut it, but let's go a little farther just to like really fuck with the audience.
Really, let's upset everybody.
Yeah.
I think Damien's director from Terrifier is really good at doing that too, where it's like you think it's over and it's like, oh, here's a second wave of, gonna fuck up your mind.
Yeah,
but that one, as far as on the disturbing level, I would have to say it's number one for me. I can't think of a film I've seen that was like crazier than that one.
Well, since you mentioned that, I want to tell you about one that I will never watch again, and I want to know if you've heard of it or have seen it, but it's called Atroz, Atroz, which means atrocious in Spanish, but it's...
I've seen the trailer for that. I've heard hype on it, but I've never actually seen it. No.
That one, it's like, it's horror, but it's more like psychological torture, sexual. It's like, okay, Martyrs fucked me up, but this, like, I have never said I will never watch a horror movie again because it's fucked me up so bad, but this one I will never watch again. So if you want something more fucked up than Martyrs.
Actually, like when I'm not scoring at this point, just because I'm watching this really disturbing scenes for the most part all day, I'm usually like late at night I put on a comedy just to clean.
Yeah, cleanse the palate.
Yeah, because I mean, seeing murder 15, 16 hours a day, you still have to stay. You still need light, see the dark, all that. So usually I put on the most unthreatening thing I can to sleep to, or something really boring, just so I can't sleep anymore with like nothing on in the background. So it's always like, even if it's an infomercial, I need something because you're hearing tones, if you try to sleep in silence, you're hearing all the tones that you used all day, and it's, and that's a race to get to sleep. Oh shit, it's 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, I'm still up. So I have to sleep with either a television on or some kind of sleep app. that's playing waves or something, just to be able to
turn off the brain,
get a couple hours. Yeah.
I struggle with that, and I experience the same kind of thing. Like if I'm working on a song for a long time, or like really into a mix, and I'm trying to go to bed, I'll just keep hearing it, and it's really hard to turn off unless, put on something or put on a podcast or whatever. But I totally relate, man. It's kind of, it's pretty insufferable at this point, because it's just like, damn, I just can't turn off my fucking brain sometimes, dude. It's really fucking hard. That's why I'll go hiking, or I'll try and do something active just to like physically change the environment to something completely different. But
yeah, usually I'll take a walk with my dog if I'm getting just field bombardment too much. I'll take a half hour and just like go get some air. But for the most part, I'm like, it's always in front of the desk, like,
Yeah.
When it's busy, when it's a busy schedule like it is right now, it's like 2-3 months of just, well, here's my life in this little area, and I don't leave it,
Yeah. I think it's so important to, especially as, musicians, engineers, people that are in front of their workstation or console like 8 to 12 hours a day. I think one of the best things you can do to help, clean up the headspace is to, like you said, go on a walk, go on a hike, or go work out, or go in the sauna, or do something physically exerting that just takes you out of that state of mind. Is also great for you, because, dude, like, I know a lot of engineers that they're sedentary for so many years in the control room, and it's like, and some of them that don't, fitness isn't really a top priority or at all in their life. So it just, over the years, you can just slowly just lose yourself and, let yourself go. So I'm terrified of that. So I always make sure, like, okay, I'm going to do my hike and go on my walks and stuff, like a few times a week at least, just to stay on top of that. 'Cause it's so easy to just be in the studio all the time, man. I have to like literally like force myself to leave sometimes. And also it's like, when you're in a relationship, it's like can't never be, with your partner. So
well, your schedule's different every day too, depending on what they need. I mean, I tend to like get up at 6 a.m., try to do the day thing, be in bed by midnight kind of thing. Where it used to be the opposite, especially during COVID, I couldn't sleep in the day. So I would be up. I mean, I'd have to sleep in the day. I would be up to like 7, 8 a.m. working on Terrifier 2 and a couple other things. And I would sleep in the day because I was like, well, why be awake in the day? There's nobody's outside. Yeah. Everybody's, so that was completely reversed compared to now. Now I like to get up, have my coffee, and jump right in, fresh ears.
Nice. Same. Yeah. I mean, I think as I've gotten older, I'm more like in tune with the earth and like, okay, with, the 9 to 5 thing. So I'm similar. I like to get up. I get up at like 7, get to the studio by like 8:30, and I'm just, kind of have a normal 9 to 5, 9 to 6 hours. And sometimes it goes a little longer. But
it's good to be able to have a schedule where you work and then you shut it down.
Yeah.
There's a finish line every day where it's like, okay, at this time I'm going to get to chill. The problem with that is usually when you get to that time, you don't want to do anything. You don't want to hear anything either.
Yeah.
You just kind of want to sit in silence, or like if I do go, like, I don't watch much horror when I'm working on a film, but if I do, it'll be something to go back for like inspiration. Like I'll have Cronenberg films on in the background, like inaudible, but like I had The Brood on the other night, just so if I look away from what I'm working on, I'll look up and see kids with cleft palates, because that movie freaked me out. So I'll have stuff like that in the background, even when I'm working on another film, just so when I walk by, there's something else visually than what I'm working on. So, but usually it's with the volume down, just for visuals.
Yeah, because I mean, an image can spark some completely random inspiration sonically. Like, so if you're working on Terrifier and then you look over at, there's some horror scene or whatever, you might be able to come up with something completely random that you're inspired by that visual that you probably wouldn't have done if you didn't see it, if that makes sense.
I also find myself, the older I get, the less rock and roll I listen to.
Same.
I feel like I've heard it all at this point. So it's like, even when I'm just listening to music, whether it's while I'm eating dinner or I put something on the turntable, it's usually a composer or a score. Again, it's usually more of a soothing one, an orchestral.
What are some of your favorites?
Currently, I do like the score for The White Lotus, which is funny because I haven't even seen the actual show, but everybody's like, man, you gotta check out the score. It's really interesting. I can't pronounce the guy's name, but that score is really cool. I usually go back to Bernard Herrmann. Like, I love the Taxi Driver score. I actually really like the new Reznor, Atticus Ross score for Bones and All. Yeah, I haven't seen that film either. I usually hear the score before I see the movie.
Yeah.
Or I'll see a film and I'm like, oh, that score is really cool. And like Christopher Young is one of my favorites, especially Hellraiser. The original, that's a great score. And then I'll listen to really unorthodox ones. Like I bought the score from Miss 45. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie. It's like one of the first vigilante female
When did that come
movies. 81,
Okay,
82. I think it's John Delia is his name. That score is really interesting because it's a lot of really just abstract rank horns that are really noisy and unnervy with like a lot of cool undertones in it. And I like, obviously I like the Goblin stuff, but I've heard all that a million times. But I'm trying to think of what else. I actually really like Tyler Bates' score for Pearl. I thought that was really great. String arrangements on there are awesome. And yeah, there's more. It's just.
What about like video games? Do you like any video game scores?
I'm not a video game guy. I think the only one I have ever even owned in the last 20 years was somebody got me the Friday the 13th one as like they knew I had an Xbox with no games. They're like, dude, why do you have this and you have no games? So they got me the Friday the 13th where you can play as Jason or the counselor. I think I messed with it for 20 minutes and no time.
Yeah. I love video games, but same thing. It's like, I can't justify spending 2 to 3 hours playing.
The last time I really spent time was like GoldenEye.
Hell yeah.
64 when that came out. That was like addicting. That and Twisted Metal were the two that, because they were the first one. I mean, that was so revolutionary that 4 people could be playing at the same time. If you had a big screen TV back then, it was like, it was insane, It's the little things. Like I was talking to somebody that's like 30. I'm going to be 50 next month, so it's like totally different time period. And I remember the first time I saw microwave popcorn, when I was like 6, like 79 or 7 years old. I remember thinking that was so like amazing, because I saw so much technology in the 80s when I first could absorb it, like just cable, MTV launching. It was just all these things that were so fresh and so new. And now, I kind of feel, I feel like I grew up in the best time possible. Like people are like, oh, if you could turn back and be 20, and no.
Saying, dude, fuck that.
I love the fact that I grew up when I grew up and got to absorb, which I think was the best era for pop culture, just in general. Just the music, film, everywhere across the board, and then inventions and everything that was going on at a time where it was like everything was new, And now there's a new app every week that does something different. And I understand it's probably the same kind of excitement for a 13-year-old that, gets a new app that does something crazy to him. But it was just more about creation, it seems like now, instead of just spitting out technology. Like back then, it was like everything was like monumental.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, now, everything is, I really can't relate to, Gen Z or, younger kids. I mean, it's just like everything, their faces are down in their phone all day and everything's on TikTok. And it's like, I get it. But at the same time, I'm a little upset with where the industry, especially the music industry, has gone, like with everything being on apps and streaming but that's just what people are used to. You know, like kids don't buy CDs. You know, like majority of them, it's all like, oh, is it? Can I find it on my TikTok app so I can put it in my video? And if it's like doesn't exist on that, then it doesn't
It
exist
doesn't
to them.
exist, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah, my house is still like a library. I mean, I still have, rows of vinyl, rows of Blu-rays, rows of DVD, even VHS. I got a ton of VHS. Even VCRs, when that first came out, or we had a Betamax, but the concept that you could actually own a movie and watch it anytime you want. Because, I mean, growing up when I did, there was only 3 networks, and you had to see it on the time it came out. And if there was a commercial, you had to make sure you were sitting back down. You got one shot at it,
Yeah.
at seeing whatever shows you watched or whatever the movie of the week was.
Yeah.
I mean, now you just push a button, you can pretty much watch anything that's ever been available. So it's kind of like you had to work for it more which I could see to somebody young would, Jesus, that's an inconvenience, waste so much time.
Mm-hmm.
But it made you also really have to focus on the thing. I mean, I think a lot of people watch stuff now while they're on their phone and glance up, and they can just pause it if they're, couldn't do that before. So, yeah, I'm glad I grew up. And when I grew up, I think it was, and I think most people putting out really good art are somewhere around my age group right now. I don't hear it a lot from, there's a lot of good young composers actually, which is surprising to me, but I think those people took a different path as far as like people doing just straight up music or trying to break into whether it's the pop world or rock world or hip hop or whatever. It seems like they're kind of jaded from the get-go, where it's more the concern is I got to get this many hits on my YouTube and subscribers than honing their craft.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's starting to show, the cracks are starting. Not to say that's across the board. There's always good, I stumble upon good young artists, but for the most part, I think I don't see anybody of Prince caliber right now.
I agree. Yeah, it seems to be all about the numbers, like you said, the views, the subscribers. That's like the top priority over like you said, honing your craft and the actual art.
I think also even like taking an instrument like guitar, I remember literally walking in a snowstorm to go look at the Guitar World. Didn't have enough money to buy it, but I would go and write down the sheet music.
Oh, really?
When I first started learning to play guitar. I mean, we had to work for it. Now it's like you have an app, you can learn any song. There's tutorials up, And I think there's still people that are like, oh, I don't really have to get good on that. There's an app for that can make it sound like him, I think everybody thinks there's an app for everything. And soon there probably will be.
Yeah, there almost is.
I mean, I was hearing Timbaland, like a hip-hop producer, like was saying how his job won't even be needed in 2 years because they already have AI producers that they just do algorithms of this style, and they're going to put out full production beats for hip-hop artists where they won't need to hire anybody.
Yeah, I had a long conversation about this with another a friend of mine, artist, but yeah, I see that it's becoming, the algorithms and AI, it's getting better and better. I still think that I don't think, our jobs as musicians and producers will be lost. I still feel like
I don't either, because I would love to see an algorithm try to even try to analyze the Terrifier score and
I don't think there's no comparison to a human being, pouring their emotion into music, into a score, into a film. I don't think that can be 100% replicated ever. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but who knows how good it'll get.
See. I don't think we're far off from seeing the attempt.
Yeah.
So we'll see if it sticks.
Yeah.
That's another reason why recording, I try not to just stay to the grid and have everything. I try to make it swing a little bit more than than just locking everything to a grid where it's mechanical. And sometimes I like mechanical music, that's highly edited. But for the most part, I like stuff that is very free form where it sounds natural. And I know once Pro Tools and everything came in, it kind of took away some of the human element with the rigidness where it's got to be perfect. I think that's a cool thing about doing music for film is it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to fit the scene and get the vibe of what they're trying to portray with the character. So
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be as, oh, we need the perfect drum sound, you know, we need a crash on every downbeat, you know, just those signature things that everybody thinks has to apply, especially in rock music. You know, I think hip hop's a lot more free because I can use a lot different sounds and stuff and not get ridiculed. It almost seems like fresh, where it's like rock has so long been in this box where it's like, okay, we need to double the vocal 4 times. We need to have, I mean, in the 80s, it was the gated reverb snare sound. Now it's just like, it's got to be super polished. You know, the kick has got to have tons of thud and dB, and it's got to be mastered and bricked so it's this loud where there's no dynamics. You know, I hear things that are mastered low. Like, I love Jack White's records because they're not bricked.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, oh, his records sound low, though. I'm like, well, that's what the volume knob is for. Turn it up.
Oh, man, I could talk for hours about the loudness wars is what it's called, like, with mastering. But, like, yeah, I appreciate musicians and artists that they're not so concerned about how loud their record is compared to everyone else's, and when they just they'll let the master breathe so that you get more of the dynamics, more in the human feel, and just in general, when a mix has more space to breathe, then you feel the transients better, you feel the kicks and snares a little snappier. So yeah, I'm all for that.
And I didn't want to come off like a, you know, old, like, crotchety old man, because there are a lot of new bands I like. I love Starbenders. I don't know if you've heard of them. Mm-mm. They're a great band that somebody turned me on to. That she has a great voice, really good songs. I actually really like Jesse Joe Stark's new record. I thought that was really put together well. So there are young artists I like, but for the most part, I'm just glad I'm from the era.
I hear you. Yeah.
I'd rather be old and wise than trying to figure out. Being young right now, it's got to be really hard.
Yeah, it is.
You know,
it seems
without
really
them
rough.
even knowing how hard it is.
Right.
They probably think their lives are really easy, but it's like everybody now that has a computer can make a record. Whether it's good or bad is irrelevant, and you just get lost in this bombardment of, you know, thousands and thousands and thousands of songs, people trying to break in, and it just gets convoluted and nothing really stands out. So when you do find something that stands out, it's usually by accident, or everything I find out that's cool is always a friend.
Yeah.
Like, it's word of mouth. It's never because I see a video or, you know, an influencer like did something where they hyped it. It's always one of my friends like, hey, have you heard this? And I put it on, it either sticks and I buy it or listen to it frequently, or it kind of, you know, but it's always word of mouth from friends.
Yeah, same with me. Sometimes I'll go down the rabbit hole on Tidal or Spotify, and they have this thing where they'll recommend you similar artists, and I'll just keep refreshing that, and I'll listen. Like, if I'm trying to find some new inspiration or like a new artist that I like, and every once in a while I'll come across something I was like, holy shit, this is awesome. But of course, a band I've never heard of with not a huge following, but that I'll buy their record and, you know, just to support, because, you know, we hope that people will do that for us, right? When they discover our music, and if they like it enough, that they'll invest in purchasing a vinyl or a CD or whatever. So I like to kind of give back that way, because I know how hard it is. It's like, even bands and artists they're so talented, and they have a great record, a single, video with great production, and they spent a lot of time on it. They invested a lot of money into it to get it polished and mastered and whatnot. But if they don't have the right team behind them, meaning like they don't have PR or marketing or management to really put it out there to the masses and get a lot of eyes on it, like, it just kind of falls in the cracks. And sometimes there are bands that get lucky and the algorithm catches on and people keep referring it, and then they'll get a lot of eyes on them. But yeah, it's like,
well, also, I mean, touring used to be a vehicle to, it's so weird how it shifted, because in the 80s and 90s you toured to sell records. Now you make a record so you can tour.
Yeah.
And Now it's even harder for mid-level bands, even if they had a big single, to like keep that relevance. And staying on tour right now is incredibly expensive. Most of the bands that are even successful are coming home panicking about how they're even going to pay rent because they didn't make any money on tour. A lot of the venues are taking all the merch money. So I have a lot of empathy for new bands and even bands that haven't quite hit the stadium arena status that are still playing the 2000 series, because it's going to get rougher,
Yeah.
And cost of touring, cost of gas right now, gasoline, I mean, for tour buses is like doubled. So there's a lot of profit that, I just see it going in a really weird direction where I'm so grateful that I can do film and stay home and not have to, oh man, I got to get a tour, I got to get back out there, and it's no rush.
Yeah. So I was gonna ask you, like, do you miss touring at all? Or are you very content with your composing lifestyle?
I feel like I had a really good career in touring. Even back to 20s, I did the whole thing with the van, signed to a couple small labels, did all the music conferences, and then going from that to doing something like Manson, where you're more, obviously catered to, and it's more of a catered experience where like you don't have to worry about stringing your own guitars and like so to do it at that level, I feel very fortunate. It was great time. We'll see what happens with that, but I don't necessarily miss it because I felt like I absorbed it all when it was happening. I really took it in, and I appreciate every second of it. So if it never happens again, I'm totally. Plus, I mean, the older you get to, doing a 6 to 9 month thing, being away from home,
Brutal.
is whether or not your family, your dogs, just being gone. So it is, to me, like I feel really fortunate that I get a chance to just sit at home, and to me it's just another part of my life now that, oh, I'm in this junction of my life now. And I like to look back and reflect, and I still laugh and like have a lot of good memories, and if it happens again, great. If it doesn't, though, I'm totally fine with the experiences I've had and felt like, I mean, I was playing clubs at 15, so it's, 35 years of playing live, 34, somewhere around that. I feel like I've almost done it all.
Yeah.
At every level, playing to 10 people and playing to, 100,000. At the end of the day, it's still pretty much the same thing,
Yeah, totally.
It's about making it look easy. That was always my thing, is like, make it look easy. The pros make it look easy. So
yeah. So you started with Manson in 2014. Was that correct? Around there?
yeah.
Okay. So like from your experience, was it how did you balance these long touring runs, and like you said, it can be stressful on relationships and home life. How did you what kind of advice could you give to kids or people going on tour, like how to manage it, to manage that dynamic?
I think first starts with your mind. Luckily for me, I never suffered from anxiety or depression or anything like that, because I've seen a lot of people that go on tour haven't corrected that before they go and jump on a 6-month thing when they're at home, and then they unravel or they turn to tons of drugs and alcohol to suppress that. So I'd say, one, get your mind in shape. B, get your health in shape before you go, because 9 times out of 10 you are going to be drinking, you are going to be partaking in, stuff that isn't necessarily healthy for you.
Right.
Not all the time, but so I think just having those 2 things before you go in are good, and then just having your gig down, to the point where you don't have to think about it, where it becomes routine.
Yeah.
A lot of people think, oh, it's routine, that's no fun. Routine is actually a lot of fun, because then you can concentrate more on performance and connecting with the audience, and you're not thinking about, you don't even have to look at your hands anymore. It's a flow, it's part of you. So to me, as far as that, and then travel try to get the best accommodations you can within the budget you're in. It does matter where you sleep every night, you know. The better the hotel, the better a night's rest. And that's not to persuade anybody that's in a band trying to do that and sleeping on floors, because I did that too. But I think that's a 20-year-old, 30-year-old's game. Once you hit in your 40s, if you're going to tour, I think you want to have the best accommodations that you can have. And luckily, fortunately, I was able to have that in Manson. It was great.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to tour. I haven't had the opportunity to do any like long runs. I've done a couple one-off things, but I think if I'm kind of glad it didn't happen, because I feel now I'm more ready. I've been sober for almost 2 years. I feel healthier, like I'm just feel more secure in pretty much every aspect of my life. So I'm glad nothing came up in the past, like a touring opportunity, because I felt maybe I wouldn't have been ready. But yeah, what you said makes a lot of sense about, you know, making sure you're mentally there and ready for that kind of a commitment.
The other thing too is you make a lot of relationships on the road with not only, you know, your crew, everybody that's on tour with you, whether or not they're on stage or behind the scenes. You make friends and stuff, and you get kind of close to certain people, and then all of a sudden it's over. And some of these people you'll never see again. They go on to work with somebody else. You know, you might stay in contact with text every once in a while, but so that's also a weird feeling, you know, to go out and feel like, oh, this is my family for the next 6 months. And they do become like a family. And then you come home, everybody goes to their real families, and you don't really speak that much, you know.
Yeah.
I have a couple of friends that I've met like on tour that I still reach out to, and they still reach out to me. But for the most part, everybody just continues with life, and they're on to the next thing that they do.
Yeah.
So that can be a weird thing if you're coming home to nothing. You know, if you're single and you go out on tour and you have all these great relationships with people, and then all of a sudden you come home and you're by yourself, that can also be kind of jarring to your mental state where, you know, I always need at least a week to decompress from a tour back into normal life. You know, you're probably not on the right time schedule, especially coming back from Europe or Japan or something.
Yeah.
And, you know, it takes a couple days just to, oh, okay, this is what my home life's like again. It's almost too quiet, too, because everything on touring, you're on a schedule. You know, you got to be here, you got to be awake at this time, you got to eat this time, you got to play the show, you got to get on the bus, you got to catch a flight. It's all very scheduled routine.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden you're sitting in your living room and you have all the time in the world to do. That's why I was always fortunate to be able to jump into a film when I was off tour, which I like to work. So like sitting there not knowing what to do with myself is kind of, you know, because pretty much on tour you've already watched all the new movies in your hotel. So you come home and you're like, okay, what now? So if you're on tour and you come home, the best advice I could do is dive right in to something else after a couple days, or else you will go stir crazy, and it'll be like, it's because you're going from super intense, everything thrown at you all the time, to it's just you in a room, peace and quiet, you know.
Yeah, and I've heard like some people will get like post-tour depression because, like you said, they, you know, everything was so routines and, you know, everything was planned out for you, and then when you get back home and, you know, you have nothing lined up, and you don't really know what to do with yourself, so it becomes kind of like, oh, well, I miss my friends, I miss
I have friends that like want, if it was up to them, they'd be on tour 12 months out of the year.
Yeah.
They loved that, where that would drive me crazy. At some point it's got to end, or it's just, because then it just becomes kind of boring. It's like, okay, you're doing the same thing every day.
Yeah, it seems like it would be very like physically taxing on your body as well.
It actually keeps you, I think it keeps you, if you're doing a high energy show, I think it actually keeps you pretty healthy.
Yeah.
Like I would always drop pounds when I'd go on tour just because you're sweating every night, cardio. I mean, the show itself is like an hour of cardio, you know, where you get home, you're scoring a film, or you're behind a computer, you get complacent. So I actually thought touring kept me more on my toes than not touring.
Yeah.
I didn't really get tired. I never got sick. I know a lot of people get sick when they would go to Europe or just travel on a plane. That never happened to me. I always felt great on tour. But yeah, I guess the best advice I would give is enjoy the moment, take it all in. Don't take it for granted because it may never happen again. and then just find something to stay busy with when you are home and you're not, or else you will start missing it and will become an issue where like, I want to be out again. And then it becomes a thing where you're almost obsessed with being gone all the time, which isn't necessarily a good, you need some sense of home,
I agree. So let's talk about Terrifier a little bit. I'm curious, from working on the first one to the second one, what was like the main difference for you when you were composing for Terrifier 2 compared to the first one? Was there any like kind of a different approach that you wanted to go into with?
The first one, I did a lot of it on tour because schedule, I was in South America at the time, and we were doing Mexico, South America. So when everybody else was having fun, I did like a good 5-6 days in my hotel rooms. I had a mobile rig that I was doing because of the schedule it was on. And then I finished it, the rest of it, when I got home in like a week. So the first one I literally did in like probably total time 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Maybe 14 days. Where the second one, I wouldn't say it's rushed, but it was definitely like, okay, I didn't really think about much of how I was going to take each cue or like how I was going to approach it. Mm-hmm. With Terrifier 2, having 3 years to do the score because of COVID, because of delays and the shooting, because it was originally supposed to come out in 2020. So having that extra time, I will say, was great because I got to mess with a lot of ideas and things that I probably wouldn't have tried if I would have been under like a 2-month. Mm-hmm. And you get to keep going back to it, so it was always fresh. And it was so much music because it's like 2 hours and 28 minutes or whatever. I mean, so it was a lot of cues. But yeah, so I like being under duress and having to do something really fast. It's challenging, but it's also nice to know that you have almost unlimited amount of time to make this thing great. So a lot of people say they like the first one more. That's more raw. The second one's a little more ear candy, and there's some orchestral elements to it and different instrument palette. But yeah, the first one I did in like 2 weeks, and the second one I did in over 2 years. So,
did you incorporate any, like, since you're on the road, was everything pretty much digital, like in the box, or did you have any analog gear with you? And on the second one, did you kind of get into more weird sound designy things?
The first one was pretty much all in the box. It was all plugins, and then, well, no, I shouldn't say that. There's some Moog on there. There's a Juno on there, but for the most part, it was all plugins, especially the stuff I was using when I was on tour. The second one has tons of organic instruments. The second one actually even has my little dog in it.
Really?
Yeah, I would. I think I've told this story before, but I had a little Pomeranian, and when you'd give it a bath, it would just scream in terror. Hated baths, but besides that, it's a perfect dog. For whatever reason, did not like water, so I would give him a bath, and one time I mic'd him, just doing the thing, and then I would filter it, and you would never know, but it's under a lot of the cues in Terrifier 2.
Nice.
If you really listen, you'll hear it.
I love stuff like that, where you create a sound using something that you would never think of for that sound. So
yeah, this movie I'm doing, The Art of Killing, right now, I'm using a lot of back masking, which I've never messed with too much, I mean, taking samples and of different like exorcisms and like just bizarre stuff that I have a library of, and then completely filtering it so you can't tell what it is. There's a lot of that stuff in the new one. I also like sounds that are felt more than heard, which aren't even really audible to the ear, but you feel underneath. It's like the weight of it. Mm-hmm. So I've been trying to take that approach more especially with the movie Stream, where you'll feel some things that you can't necessarily hear.
So is it more low frequency stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And sometimes it's things that only happen for not necessarily stings, but just like little hums that you'll hear for 3-4 seconds and then they go away. Just it's going to, I think this score will actually freak people out to listen to in headphones. It's going to be, that's the other thing I'm focusing more on this film with, like a lot of panning things and positions. I don't usually mess with panning too much unless it's something I want circulating. This time I'm trying to like really put things in weird places where they just come out of nowhere for a couple seconds and they're gone. So that's kind of the approach with that film that I'm working on now. I always try to do something different with every, trying to keep it fresh.
When you said backmasking, I immediately thought of there's a plugin company called Freak Show Industries. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they have a plugin called Backmask, and it's so ridiculous. I'll send it to you, but they have like quite a cool collection of really fucked up, like demonic, weird plugins, and there's one called Dumpster Fire, but like, yeah, I love the kind of, the eerie, like reversing of sounds and like, adding white noise and just completely fucking things up. But they're a great company.
Yeah, making it unrecognized. I used a lot of, on Terrifier 2, I also used a lot of mandolin, but it was so filtered and I would use it distort the hell out of a mandolin, and like you would never know it's mandolin, and then add Ebo to it just because it's completely different than using a guitar of any,
Yeah.
It's real tinny and real. So I always try to look around and see like what can, also things in my house, like can that make noise? Can that candlestick holder do something cool? Because I like miking stuff up a lot, even if it's outside too. I have my front gate to my place. I mic'd that up and just slammed it a couple times. That's in there.
Nice.
So I try to keep it original too, like because I don't want to use stock sounds ever, or stock presets where somebody can go, oh, I know what that is,
Exactly.
I mean, the normal moviegoer has no idea, but composers do judge other composers on their work.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of guys where I'm like, that's kind of stock. I've heard it before.
Yeah,
it's not interesting.
I don't want that.
And I'm sure there's a lot of people that say about me, like it's being the horror. But I think the main thing is keep it as interesting as possible with whatever you can use, if there's a place for it.
So when you're recording random stuff at your house for sound design and effects, are there any like particular mics and mic preamp combinations you like to use for, say, like a gate, or is there anything specific your go-to that you commonly use, or are you just...
Honestly, this is probably not the answer you want, but sure, 57. I use 57s to mic everything, pretty much. To me, it's still like, even if it's acoustic guitar, even vocals, like anything ambient, it just always works.
Yeah.
For me, it's pretty much all I need. It's 57, and we'll go from there. That's I don't actually use a lot of different mics. I mean, even for vocals, which I don't use a lot on score, but like when I record other people's vocals, at one point I had a $2,300 Neumann, and I also had a digital reference that was $200, and the digital reference sounded better to me. To me, mics are a weird thing, because if like you could like take somebody like Adele, you could get her on a $5,000 mic, or you could get her on a Radio Shack toy and it's still gonna sound like Adele.
Hell yeah.
So I think a lot of people focus too much on, that's kind of the stuff I was talking about, where a lot of people are like, oh, I have to have this mic and I have to have this drum sound with this compressor. I think all of that's already been tackled. I think the best thing you could do is get a shitty mic and see what you can do with that.
Yeah.
Especially with scoring, because I mean, you're more free to be abstract, and doesn't have to be polished all the time, especially in horror. It can be raw.
Yeah.
I think that's half the fun of it. But there's definitely a place for good gear and expensive stuff. But for the most part, I don't really ever think about the money of I got to use that mic because it's $4,000. It's better. I don't necessarily look at things like that. Just like I have guitars that are really expensive, and my go-tos are usually the $300 ones, for whatever reason, whether they're just easier to play, or like, I don't judge anything by the money on an instrument or like how much it's worth. I think that's kind of been misconstrued through time.
Oh yeah. I mean, I always kind of laugh when, people will say stuff like, well, if we don't use this gear, then, it's not going to sound as good because, so and so used it on this record. I'm like, none of that stuff matters. You know what I mean? It's like just because whoever used it.
I think that was one of the problems I've had with metal, like in the last 20 years, is like everybody has the same drum sound.
It's a lot of the same samples that are used too.
And anything with the blast beats, it's the same kick sound, same tom sound. To me, I don't know. I'd rather hear something big and roomy than sounds like a typewriter.
For sure. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people fell into that trap. I tend to call it the Pantera trap, where like Pantera had really big sounding albums, in the 90s. And at that point, that was a new production style that hadn't, Terry Date, him, Deftones. And I think everybody chased that. And I think they're still chasing it, but now it's even more dramatized. Like, we got to make that kick so punchy that you feel it in your chest. And I mean, it works for some of those bands, but I just hear every band has the same production style now. It's kind of like, and the minute I hear that formula or that production style, I'm kind of out. Like, it doesn't sound original to me. It sounds like just another continuation of,
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I mean, I get a lot of my, clients and artists I work with, they're referencing like their favorite records and they're like, well, how do we get this sound? So I kind of find myself falling into that trap where I'm just, cause whenever I work with someone, it's always about what they want. So I always do whatever makes them happy. And so I'll, if they want that sound, I'll gladly do it. I'll gladly make the master really, extremely loud and brick walled because it, like I said, it's whatever the client wants.
Yeah, it's whatever that, yeah.
So, but yeah, I totally agree because it gets really boring when you're using the same kind of samples and making everything perfectly edited to the grid. So it's always a treat for me when I get to go into the studio and track drums and just cut it live and use all the tones that, were recorded through the console and get a really nice room sound and just use that and not have to worry about replacing anything or making it sound like something else. So yeah, you can totally relate with that. And I think just a lot of musicians they're afraid of having it sound too different than all the modern stuff. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, because they're all chasing the illustrious record deal that, and those are guys in boardrooms, if they're even still boardrooms. I don't even know how labels work now. I mean, I have a label, but it's totally not the major thing, even down to distribution. I send everything out myself. So I think a lot of people are working in more unorthodox ways and kind of steering away from that, trying to chase the big deal. I think those days are kind of over. If you can get an indie just to put out your record and get some traction, do something viral with a video, use visuals to your advantage. There are some really good videos, and they don't cost millions of dollars, or hundreds or thousands even.
Right.
I mean, now with phone capabilities, you can really do a great music video on a phone.
Oh yeah.
An iMovie. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what you did on and that goes into film just like it does with sound. Everybody thinks, I have to have a $50,000 Red camera to shoot a good video when you can do it on this thing. And sure. I've seen people, I've done one on my phone in bed.
Was did you do the Devereaux video, or did someone else do that one?
Oh, the one with Chrissy?
Yeah.
That was during COVID, and everybody that played on it were in different states. Okay. Me and Chrissy were here. So we each shot our footage at home, and then she edited it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that was all done in April of 2020. And just like, okay. And what's funny is I actually had that song before COVID happened. So it wasn't like I was writing about the end times, but it just happened to go perfectly with the situation of the world at that point. So I was like, let's put this out. And yeah, but Chrissy is awesome. She does films, her and Spider. They've done a film called Allegoria, which is really good. They just did a new one called Bury Your Bride. She's super talented. I actually met her on tour. She was our opening act for Manson in 2015. I always liked her voice, just vibed with her. So, yeah. So that's how that came to fruition, but that's all her.
Is there anything else you want to touch on before we wrap it up, or you want to anywhere people can check out your work, like a website anyone can check out, like check out the Terrifier.
Oh, I do want to mention the Score vinyl because I'm getting a lot of people like, where the fuck is it? So we are reissuing a second pressing of the vinyl for Terrifier 2. And everybody that ordered one, I want to tell to be patient because people order it and they're like, after a month, why don't I have it? And anybody that deals with vinyl right now, manufacturing knows, like globally, it's backed up 6 to 10 months. You used to be able to get records in about 2 months, you know, after the test pressing. So I just want to tell everybody, be patient. It's coming. I'm anticipating May. And I am planning to reissue Terrifier 1 on CD and vinyl. And we're going to make that announcement in a couple weeks. And that vinyl we should have before Halloween.
Sick, man.
Yeah, that's what's estimated for that. So
cool.
Other than that, that's it.
Right on, man. Thank you so much. Everyone, go grab the Terrifier 1 and 2 records. Get the vinyls, stream it on Spotify, and check out all Paul's stuff. I appreciate you, man. Thanks for coming by.
Thanks for having me.
Right on.
Take care.
Cheers.